Well, church will be short this morning because we still have the storm and I want to get home before it hits, so so get impatient with me, folks. Anyway, a couple of announcements this morning. One is our study group, which meets on Thursday afternoons, is going to start a new book in January, which is called The Great Flute. It's by Norfolk Fry, who's a United Church scholar, long past now, but was considered one of the 100 greatest minds of the last century in terms of biblical criticism and literary scholarship. So it's an interesting book. It connects the whole idea of how everything that's done in Western thought in terms of literature, movies, drama is all connected to the Bible. So if you're interested in that kind of topic, I think that's something you'll consider quite interesting. The second thing I wanted to talk about was next week is White Gift Sunday. Typically on White Gift Sunday in the United States tradition, we could have Marlene do the announcement, but I don't see it. Marlene here? No. So certainly she knows Marlene's not here. She's not even two, right? So I'm not doing my homework. So typically in the United Church, white gift is when we bring things wrapped in white for some kind of social cause or community. And the last tradition we've been doing the last number of years is bringing stuff for the food bank. And I thought because now that we're doing stuff in the GAT program downstairs, maybe we would switch the tradition up and bring things in for the GAT program. So I asked Marlene what she would like us to bring next Sunday for white gifts. So she's put a list in the bulletin. So there's things like mitts and hats, not canned goods for a change, and not craft dinner for a change. I know. Sunday morning, white gift. Last thing you do is reach in the cupboard, grab craft dinner, and run out the door to church. I know. I hate to break that tradition for you folks, but that's going to break. So give some thought. Look at the list in the bulletin. If you don't know what, just call the office or call Marlene, and she'll give you an idea for next week. So that will happen during church on White Gift next Sunday. Any other announcements? I have to take that. Good. None. Okay. Anyway, if anybody. Oh yes, we have the United Church calendars for next year for sale. They are $5 each. They're oh yeah. Would you like to introduce our guest today, please? And then we'll plug his calendar.
We have this morning Rick Lamoureux, who's no stranger here, and so lovely to have him speaking. And great photographer, and let's see photos on ideas. Also in those church calendars. Anyway, I can't hear what you're saying, but glad to have you here, and the church calendars are for over $5.
Thanks, Dan. This is Rick. Days. Okay, great. And if you're visiting with us this morning, I know we have several people visiting. Welcome. Enjoy the service. Stay for coffee. And prepare to be delightfully welcomed by people in the congregation at this moment. So say good morning to each other, please.
Okay, Bill, I want
So this is the first Sunday in Advent, which are the weeks preceding up to Christmas. Typically in the Protestant tradition, there are 4 Sundays. Each of them have a different theme: hope and peace, joy and love. And this Sunday, the first Sunday, is typically the theme is hope. So that's what we're going to go with this week. So the theme is believing in hope, and I've got a couple of opening thoughts here. One from Albert Einstein, who said, "Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning." And Richard Rohr is an American minister. He says, "The theological virtue of hope is the patient and trustful willingness to live without closure, without resolution, and still be content and even happy because our satisfaction is now at another level, and our source is beyond ourselves." And Pope Francis said this: "We must restore hope to young people, help the old, be open to the future, spread love, be poor among the poor. We need to include the excluded and to preach peace." And as the tradition is, we light a candle each week in the weeks of Advent, and we start off with the first candle of hope, and I would invite Bonnie and Bruce up to do that. We will respond to them with the bolded parts and so forth.
In this season of expectant waiting, we wonder.
So many marvels, so much that confounds us, so much that is unique, so much richness, so many things we can touch, taste, smell, see, feel.
Look at life, abundant in growing complexity and with bewildering intricacy. Look at the variety. Look how they work together, connected.
We bask in wonder at God's creativity, at blessings showered abundantly.
It's always the same, folks. Doesn't matter whether it's a match or a phone call. We'll just stay seated for the service. Sing verse 1 of hymn number 7. Just stay seated. Hymn number 9, People Looking. So we come to the sacrament of Holy Communion, and I'll say a couple of words before we begin. First of all, welcome. In the United Church tradition, the communion has always been an open table. In that sense, it means that anybody who wishes to participate in communion is welcome to do so, regardless of whether you're a member of this church, a member of the United Church, or a member of the Protestant tradition at all. Communion has always been something that we welcome people to come and participate on the basis of how they feel about it. And because this particular congregation is an affirming congregation, it also broadens that welcome to people of all races, of all orientations, of all backgrounds, and of all beliefs. It used to be the tradition of the church that we used to ask, do you believe what we believe in order that you can belong? And now we ask, do you wish to belong? Do you feel comfortable here? Is this a place where you can find something that means something spiritual in your life? And if it is, then you are welcome to be present with us. We welcome you with open arms. And that has been the place that our congregation has chosen to be and to go. And so we do that completely and openly and honestly when we say that. And we also, that also it goes all the way to children. So in the United Church, it was one of those strange anomalies. The church realized about in the 60s and 70s that when it baptized children, they also became full members of the church. And I used to tease my board that if they didn't agree with one of the things I wanted to do, I'd just bring them to Sunday school and let them have a vote. Kids are all very progressive, much more than adults. And the United Church struggled in those years as well. Well, then, do children have, are they able to come to communion? And became the group of questions. And part of the discussion was, like the adults, well, they wouldn't understand. So then I would say to the adults that when you're spending the communion, they would flip us and say, oh, I think it's fine for them. So we have come to that place where communion now becomes your mystical, not our mystical way, which we commit to. Also, we have grape juice, which is always been the United Church tradition. The United Church has a policy around alcohol, which is called voluntary total abstinence. I don't know what it means. But the practical application is when we have communion, we have grape juice rather than alcohol, so that everybody who comes can feel welcome and spoken. They live in the privilege. And also because it's the United Church, we have a gluten-free option. So that will be in the little jar on the plate at the front. So we can cover all of it. I want to say just a second about the whole idea of mysticism. I've been thinking in the last week about what do we do in our lives that's mystical and ritual. Now you may have your own rituals at Christmas and at Easter, maybe different times of your Thanksgiving, but what do you do in your life that is a mystical ritual? And I could find very few of those things in my own life. And I realized that other when I perform baptism, communion is one of the only things that I do in my life that is a mystical ritual. And one of the things that I understand about mystical rituals is that we take communion. So as you take communion this morning, I would encourage you in the very basis of your bread, which is a foundational element in the grace, which is as old as time, really, in terms of human beings, that you find something mystical for you, something spiritual in those brief moments. And you think of it. That's the kernel of the peace and spirit of grace that you need for the desire of your life. And that is why we call it communion, because it's your opportunity to commune with the divine. Before people take communion, often they take a moment to confess their sins, and by sins I mean those things which burden you, those things which stop you from being fully complete and fully human. And you know what those are. So let us take a moment in silence that we may offer those things which hinder you from being fully what God created you to be.
God, we ask that you hear our prayers, our confessions, our words, those things that bind us, and opportunities to speak to us. Promise. Therefore, with these and other ancestors in the faith, both named and unnamed, who through the ages and all over the world have borne courageous witness to the hope of England, we praise you for you. Last night he said with a strong Jesus took those who did for his people and transformed it into something new. He took bread, sprinkled food of the bread, and blessed and broke and gave to those who were his friends. Take these, this is my body broken for you. Whenever you do this, human being. After supper, he took the cup of wine, common drink of his people, and gave it to them, saying, drink this, all of you. This is the new covenant in my blood. Each time you do this, remember me. By remembering Jesus in this way, he became our common God, as we proclaim the mystery of faith. Send, O covenant God, your Holy Spirit upon us in what we do, that we in these gifts of power and in times of storms and wonders, what is we do as we stood on the night, we prayed, we said, we prayed, giving thanks for the bread we broken and said to the people, you said if my body was to be broken for you, each time you take a gift of it, you can remember it. The same manner also, taking a cup of wine from the table, what is the same? This wine is my blood, which shall be shed for you. Each time you drink it with me, you do so.
to me and never be hungry. Take this bread, drink this cup, trust in me and you will not thirst. I am the bread of life, the true bread sent from the Father. Eat this bread, drink this cup, come to me and never be Come to me and never take this bread, drink this cup, trust in me and you will not hurt. Eat my flesh and drink my blood, and I will raise you up on the last day. Eat this bread, drink this cup, come to me and never be hungry. Take this bread, drink this cup, trust in me and you will not thirst. Anyone who eats this bread will live forever. Eat this bread, drink this cup, come to me and never be hungry. Take this bread, drink this cup, trust in me and you will not thirst. If you believe and eat this bread, you will have eternal life. Eat this bread, drink this cup, come to me and never be hungry. Take this bread, drink this cup, trust in me and you will not thirst. I am the bread of life, the true bread sent from the Father. Eat this bread, drink this cup, come to me and never be hungry. Take this bread, drink this cup, trust in me and you will not thirst. Your ancestors ate manna in the desert, but this is the bread come down from heaven. Eat this bread, drink this cup, come to me and never be hungry. Take this bread, drink this cup, trust in me and you will not thirst.
you would join me in the post-communion prayer. We give you thanks, God of peace and promise, through the words of your prophets and the faith of your followers. You prepare the way of our redemption and bring hope to birth. And though we often grow weary of waiting, your signs call us to keep watch for that day when all things shall be made new. In the assurance of this hope, we join with all the company of heaven and earth and give you praise. Amen. Good morning, Beth. Sure. I just have a few things to say. Is that okay? All right. Okay. You give me a minute? Okay, just give me a minute. All right. That won't be too long. A couple of things. Beth is going to read from Isaiah. So I thought I would just, excuse me, we've talked about Isaiah a couple of times. So in Christianity, it views Isaiah as a single writer of his book, although the book he writes is really 3 parts and spans over about 150 years. But in Christianity, we typically think Prophet Isaiah lived around 700 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. It's quoted many times by New Testament writers, and most of these are about messianic terms like the suffering servant, the one who dies for his people, buried in a rich man's tomb, and to be a light unto the Gentiles. And the Gospel of John says that Isaiah saw Jesus in glory and spoke to him. So, very central figure in Christianity. He's considered a major prophet. I thought this was interesting. I hadn't heard this before. The Latter-day Saints movement, the Mormon Church, has a special place for Isaiah. And the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and the Covenants quote Isaiah more than any other prophet from the Old Testament. And they considered the founding of the Church of Joseph Smith in the 19th century to be a fulfillment of Isaiah 11. And also that the building of the Latter-day Saint temples, which you may have seen if you've been out west, are actually a fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah 11. I thought that was quite fascinating. And as I've been doing lately, looking at the parallels in Islam, again, which came along later, Isaiah again is considered a great prophet and was a righteous man. But one of the things that I found really interesting is that Muslim exegesis recounts that Isaiah was martyred by being sawn in half. Had never heard that before. That was a new one for me. So there you go. And I thought this was an interesting quote, because this section is about beating your swords into plowshares. This is from Ben Franklin. Those who beat their swords into plowshares usually end up plowing for those who kept their swords. So I think Ben was a bit of a cynic. I'm not sure, but Beth, sorry to keep you waiting.
That's all right. Thank you. Reading from Isaiah chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. The word that Isaiah, son of Amoz, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many peoples shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord.
I'm not going to ask whose cell phone that is. Because usually my tradition is if your cell phone goes off at church, you have to come up and speak. Nah, it's all right. They can't hear back there anyway, so it's okay. So, hope for the Pope. How's that for a sermon title? Is that okay? It's better than Pope on a rope, isn't it? So I was at a gift store once, and they had, the soap on a rope. It was Pope on a rope. Soap. I don't know what that was all about, but I guess. So I have this dilemma every time at this year. The dilemma is just, oh, sorry. It's okay. I'm all right with it. I'm all right with you sitting up there. It's okay. No, it's not the same. You can't hear up there. No. But I see, that's why the men all stayed. They're like, we don't want to hear him anyway. I know. That's why I thought you stayed up there. So I have this dilemma every Christmas. I think most of you who know me have been here over the years. This whole idea of like Christmas kind of drives me a bit crazy. And I don't mean real Christmas, I mean consumer Christmas. Like it starts so early, right? Really early. So I was thinking this year, I thought, well, I'll try and be a good guy. I'll try and be nice about it in church, because I should, right? Because I'm the minister, right? And if I'm really bad about it, then nobody will come Christmas Eve when it's supposed to be a big service, and it'll be my fault once again. So I'm going to be nice. So I thought I will look at the question then, what is more important, Christmas or Easter? I thought I would reflect on that the past week, so that's what I have reflected on. What is more important, Christmas or Easter? Okay, and we have the two paragons of Christmas and Easter, arm wrestling it out. Now, I would say, hands down, Christmas in the culture is more important. Wouldn't you? And I'm going just by the amount of money spent. Right? You can only buy so much chocolate. Right? And at Easter, what happens? Right? Cadbury comes out with a little egg that's laid by a chicken, or an Easter bunny or something. I can never remember what it's actually laid by. It's wrapped in tin foil, so that's got to hurt. But at Christmas, I mean, it's unbelievable what comes out, right? Like everything and anything has some kind of Christmas spin to it, right? So I've been thinking, why other than the consumerism. But consumerism is driven by interest, right? Consumerism isn't driven by consumerism. It's driven by there's an interest in the subject, and that fires up consumerism. Because if you're not interested in the subject, you're not interested in buying. So, been reflecting on that. What do we got next here? Oh yeah, so this one I like. So, my neighbor down the road, he said, well, you can't celebrate Christmas until Thanksgiving is over. That seems early to me. So that one's Thanksgiving chasing Christmas out. Right? Which is more, I think, easier for Americans than Canadians, right? Because they just have Thanksgiving this weekend, right? Whereas we have it in October. We tend to start, right? We start earlier. And my other neighbor said, well, we don't start our Christmas until after Remembrance Day. I still think that's early, right? I mean, what do you do when you put, and I hate to say, because I say these things and then people say afterwards, I do that. What do you do when you put your Christmas tree up at the 1st of November? It sits up there for, how long do you leave it up after Christmas? Do you get tired of it after? Like, I got neighbors, Christmas trees have been up for a month already. I see them when I drive by their house at night. I don't know, it must get boring. I don't know, maybe it's great. But there's a reason for it, right? All right. What do we got next there? This one I liked. So this is obviously a Jesus figure in Santa. And the caption is, why can't my birthday be about me? That's my wish, Santa. Is that too much to ask? Right? So you got an interesting paradigm shift here, right? You've actually got Jesus going to Santa, which is kind of backwards. But it shows you where the weight of the culture stands, doesn't it? Right? Santa's the real hero of Christmas. Because Jesus is just a baby. Right? I won't go on. I have a whole sermon about Talladega Nights. If you've ever watched it, we're not going to go on about it now. The legend of Ricky Bobby, where they're saying grace at the table, and he always prays to the baby Jesus. And his wife gives him a hard time and says, you know, Jesus grew up. He goes, I don't care. I like my Jesus as a baby. Right? It's simpler, isn't it, having a baby Jesus? Right? So that's why that Jesus doesn't fit in Christmas. Right? He's not a baby. Santa Claus has got all the power at Christmas. So what is it? Oh, sorry, I just had to put this one in because I love it. No, go ahead. It's on the left there, if you can read it. Well, if it isn't Joseph and Mary. And on the back of the left one says, our son is an honor student. The middle one, our son is in medical school. And on the last one, our son is God. Bumper stickers, license plates, you've seen them before, right? Okay. I just thought that was really funny. So, Charlie Brown, the author, right? Charles Schultz, right? So the de facto Christmas spiritual message. So, Linus, my parents told me Santa Claus isn't real. He's just a big fat lie. Charlie Brown, my parents told me the Easter Bunny is fake. Do you think we need to look into this Jesus Christ thing too? And Linus' response is, never trust anybody over 12. There's kind of a truth in that, isn't there? Right? Right? It starts off really early. Huh? And I mean, you know, when we talk about the Christmas story, and I've talked about it over the years, it's a mishmash story, right? You know, the Christian church did not start using the Christmas story till after the 4th century. Celebrated Easter every Sunday, never talked about the birth of Christ. Never talked about it, wasn't interested. Right? It wasn't until the 4th century or so that even started talking about the birth of Christ. And the Christmas stories are only in 2 Gospels, not in 4, and they contradict each other. Right? In one story there's wise men, one story there isn't. One story there's shepherds, one story there's a manger, one story there's a home. They're different stories. Right? But at Christmas we push them all together and they make a lovely, nice story, which we're going to enact on December the 15th. And I'm not sure why I'm cast as Herod in the story, but I have a feeling. Because there's no Grinch. So Herod's the closest thing to a Grinch in the story. So this is my conclusion for why Christmas still stands the test of time, regardless of it's Santa Claus or Jesus, the celebration of Christmas. I think there's a basic primal reason that Christmas in some ways is getting more significant instead of less. And this is what brought me to mind the other day. Oh, sorry, there's the question. Why is Christmas a bigger season than Easter? So when you go home today and somebody asks you, what did Allan talk about? This is what I talked about, okay, in case it didn't make any sense when you got home, okay? So this happened last year. This next slide, I think. All right. So this is my grandkids. And this is us celebrating Christmas. Looks Christmassy, doesn't it? Well, a few things missing there, right? Snow, Christmas tree, presents, all those things are missing. They're there, but they're just not there. We said to the kids, we got dinner's coming, we got the tree up, we've got presents. What would you like to do? They're like, let's go to the river and make marshmallows. So we got in the four-wheeler, we went down, lit a fire, and we made marshmallows. Now, I don't know why my middle grandchild is doing a gangster sign there. I have no idea. I did not inquire where that came from. I don't know where he picked that up. I don't want to know where he got that. But I was looking at this the other day when I was trying to discern about the Christmas Easter thing, and I thought, now, they don't care about the presents. They have more toys than God. Right? They literally have everything kids could possibly have and more. And they like opening presents. Don't get me wrong. Every kid loves opening them. But they need nothing. They want for nothing. And they don't really expect anything special for Christmas. They get lots of stuff. But they sure as heck love going down and having a fire and roasting marshmallows and getting dirty and bouncing around. They won't even ride in the seats. They have to get in the back because you bounce more in the back than you do in the front. And I was looking at that picture and thinking of that juxtaposed against the story of modern Christmas. And what exists in that is a kind of innocence that does not exist very often in the world anymore. And I began thinking about them and their lack of need, and that their excitement about Christmas, and I may be Pollyanning this a bit, but their excitement about Christmas has very little to do with what's under the tree. It has very little to do with what they're going to get. They're going to go to 4 or 5 houses, and they're going to get more than they can carry home at each house. And that just becomes de facto after a while. What's going to be Christmas is the things they do that are outside of that, like lighting fires and getting dirty and eating marshmallows. And there's a kind of an innocence in that is almost post-consumerism. And so when I think of Christmas and I think of hope, I think it is some kind of primal connection with our own innocence, that it's something we can't and won't let go of, that it reminds us of something that we either missed or had and would like to capture once more time. And each Christmas for us, regardless of our age, is this way back in to this moment of innocence. Like I said, that we may have had, or we may have never had. So I think about this culturally, and I've been thinking a lot about the Pope and the Pope's responsibilities. You can switch on there. And in this, I came across this quote: "What hope is there for innocence if it's not recognized?" And I thought about my grandchildren, and I recognize the innocence in them, but I thought about, on top of that, what about all the children in the world who've been damaged and hurt and whose innocence has never been recognized? And if you could flick it again there. This Pope gave me a lot of hope at the beginning. I don't feel as hopeful for him now. Because when he speaks for the church. He doesn't speak for the Roman Catholic Church. He speaks for the church. And we know that the church, the Roman Catholic Church, I was watching in the news the other day again, thousands of children in diocese, not in the country, in the diocese, have been sexually abused. Thousands in a single diocese. And we can't feel very righteous about ourselves in our own country because the same amounts of children have been hurt in residential schools. And we're stuck with a government now which is struggling with not paying out money and going to court, which makes them look like they're not willing to acknowledge that these kids have been hurt. And I thought, what's the underlying fundamental issue here? The issue is we have taken away their innocence, but we're treating it like it's just another crime. And we're confused as human beings about what's really happened to those children. You can kill somebody or beat somebody up or injure somebody, and they can recoup. But you take away their innocence, and they carry that burden for the rest of their lives. There is no recouping. There is coping. But they don't recoup. And when you look at what the Pope is trying to do, the Pope has never been able to get at the core of the problem. Here is a spiritual organization which is supposed to bring hope to the world, and it can't recognize that it has ripped the innocence from thousands and thousands of children. And we live in a country which has taken the innocence out of a generation of Aboriginal children. But we want to look at it as if it's a crime that we can pay to make up for. But we can't deal with the idea that it's innocence that has been taken, and that requires a whole different way of being. And I thought about this when I came to church this morning. I thought, I had other things I wanted to tell you too, but I thought, I can't even talk about those. You'll be going home depressed. What I put together in my own mind and heart on coming to church this morning, and when I was thinking about it this week, is that one of my hopes is that my children, my grandchildren, and their generation is the one who is going to figure this out. Because they're post-consumerists, some of them. They've gotten to a point where they've had enough. They've had too much. And their world is crumbling under the mass of consumerism. And they're beginning to understand, more than we ever did, what is truly true and what is really real. And that I'm not going to bed depressed at night. I'm going to bed hopeful, because I think if we support them enough, they will understand. They will understand concepts like innocence being taken and hope being destroyed. They will understand that. So I don't want you to go home distressed and anguished, but I want you to go home with the idea that hope needs to recognize innocence and that we have a responsibility, because this does not go away on us. This does not get pushed away. So I made myself up a wish list for Christmas this year, a wish/hope list. Number one on the list is that Greta Thunberg gets a good night's sleep. I feel sorry for her. I think she's a great girl, a great woman. I think she's very positive, but she looks stressed all the time. So I hope before Christmas she gets a good sleep, restful sleep. I hope that the Pope helps the church recognize the innocence that has destroyed, as opposed to looking at things as being a crime, which they are. But look at it from a spiritual sense, not from a legal criminal sense, because it never helps us to do that. I hope that our Canadian politicians start working for the betterment of the country rather than for themselves and for the little fiefdom that they happen to be currently in charge of. I hope that congregations in the Church Universal stop worrying about helping their communities and not just about survival. I hear this from churches all the time. We just want to survive. I always say, I don't want to survive. I want to thrive. I don't want to just make it. I want to really, really thrive. And I hope this Christmas we spend less money, more time with each other, talk less, listen more, ask less from each other, and pray more for each other. Happy Advent, folks. Creator God, we offer these gifts in return for all the gifts you give us each and every day of our lives. We offer them from the work of our hands and the love of our hearts, and we dedicate them to the mission of your church in this world. Amen. Somebody move my table. If you would join me in the pastoral prayer, let us pray. At this time, we remember all those with whom you would have us share your feast. For all who are ill or alone. Whom the world counts as last and least. For the nations as they strive for peace and justice. For our families and friends. Before we sing our last hymn, I'd just like to thank Richard for being with us here this morning. Thank you, Richard. It was beautiful. Thank the choir for the music this morning. It was great. And remind you, what's next Sunday? Exactly. What are you bringing? Good. Read the list in the bulletin, right? Thank you very much. You're very attentive this morning. Let us sing our closing hymn, number 20, On Jordan's Bank. And now may the peace of God, which surpasses all human understanding, keep watch over our minds and hearts, bodies and souls, this day and forevermore. Amen.